Camilo, welcome to Banking News channel. It's
you.
privilege you have you here in GFF and got opportunity to speak something about better than cash, alliance and financial inclusion, I hope so.
Thank you very much for hosting us.
First of all, can you brief me the concept that better than a cash? What it is exactly, how it is working, and how the people who is on about to journey of financial inclusiveness will be benefited. As I know that is a better than cash means obviously you are preferring to the digital ecosystem, right? What is exactly a better than cash?
Absolutely, thank you very much. So, but Better Than Cash Alliance, as its name says, we're all about digitization of payments, about moving away from cash to digital. We're based at the United Nations, at the UN Capital Development Fund, and have been around for about 11 years now. And we were started initially by a consortium of governments and increasingly governments, companies, and international development organizations with the sole mission of digitizing payments. We want to work with the governments, with companies, to move away from cash in order to bring about transparency, to reduce costs, to improve the safety of how actually financial services are run, to ensure that women are being prioritized. In many of the countries where we work, women are still experiencing a gap in access to financial services. So we see digital payments as a way for women and other groups that perhaps have been underserved historically to be able to get on the financial sector infrastructure in order to be able to access services and improve their lives throughout. We also work with companies. So the Alliance has about 85 members around the world. 35 of these are governments, and there's also companies in various sectors. For example, the fast-moving consumer goods sector, companies like Unilever, Coca-Cola, Marks and Spencer, and the work in that corporate area is mostly around digitization of corporate payments, merchant payments, and also in some ways with the ready-made garment in the digitization of wage payment. So historically, that's a sector where a lot of payments are being made, many times to women who work in a lot of the supply chains, but these payments were being done in cash. So by advocating and working with the companies to digitize those payments, we ensure that they're increasing transparency into the supply chain, advocating for financial inclusion, because then, by receiving those wages digitally, they're able to access other financial products, and of course, increasing transparency in the system because it reduces the potential for leakages, right?
Okay. Having said that, you are working on India, Pakistan kind of countries, right, and in Nepal as well. If I see the journey of Nepal, digital payment has been increased after the COVID era, right? How it helps to the financial inclusion?
So globally, we saw a huge upsurge of digital payments after COVID. This was experienced throughout the world, and especially because in many countries, governments actually saw an opportunity in that digital payments provided them a platform to be able to disburse social protection payments. When COVID happened, many countries wanted to disburse emergency payments for people to stay at home or informal workers to be at home. We as the Alliance actually worked with many governments around the world in helping them and advising them in design some of these emergency payments. One example was Colombia, for example, in South America, where we worked very closely with the Ministry of Finance and the central bank there to very quickly design the emergency system and disburse payments to, I believe it was almost 2 million households who were not covered by existing social protection. So that is just one example. In the region, in a country like India or Pakistan, Bangladesh, we have engaged for a long time. Both Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India are all members of the Better Than Cash Alliance. And we've engaged with each one in different ways. The Alliance main focus is to support government priorities when it comes to digitization. We work often with the Ministry of Finance, also with the central bank, in a way to support a whole of government approach to digitization of payments. This supports financial inclusion, this supports the digitization of the economy. In Nepal, we've seen that in the last 10 years, as you mentioned, there's been a huge increase and improvement in financial inclusion. And let me just maybe first talk about financial access, because I think that's the part where there's been a massive increase I believe one of the latest statistics from central bank database is that around almost 70% of the people actually have access post-COVID to accounts. However, usage is much lower. You have usage hovering around the 30% and even lower there's a gap between male and women. So women, I think, are below perhaps 10 percentage points. So there's obviously huge improvements that have been made, but a big opportunity, right? Countries need to move beyond access to usage, right? And then more importantly, to quality, right?
How can country like Nepal can be benefited from the Better Cash Alliance? What are the steps Nepal government has taken and you guys are doing on that?
So as I mentioned, the alliance supports its governments, through various means. We support in advocacy. Many times, for example, like we've worked with countries like in Bangladesh recently and in Pakistan, where we worked on helping design communications campaigns. For example, for the central bank, their government is in the process of introducing standardized QR. And as part of any introduction of any technology, it is important to socialize and work on the communications, across the various segments of the population. So one of the areas of work that we have been advising and providing technical assistance is how do you appropriate segmentation actually of users and develop actually communication strategies to then really call onto those users' needs, right? To ensure that obviously this infrastructure that is being created, which is useful for everyone, but perhaps there's different ways of approaching each of those segments. This could be women, it could be urban, or it could be rural users.
As I'm working on financial literacy since 4 to 5 years in Nepal, right? There is a huge gap of financial education, connection problem, and then digital adoption as well in the remote part of Nepal, which is the almost 50% of populations are in remote areas, and the 50% population in urban areas, right? And as I talk to your UN representatives in Nepal, Better Than Cash Alliance is quite inactive. If I am wrong, please correct me. Inactive. How you planning to energize your presence there to boost the financial inclusion and digital literacy? That is what is needed in Nepal right now.
So the Alliance advocates for responsible digitization of payments, and as part of this, we work with our members around the world to advocate for fair practices. Part of this actually relates to ensuring that digital financial services and digital payments are being rolled out in a way that actually address users' needs, that is designed in a client-centric way, that prioritizes women, and that more importantly is actually being designed in a way that strengthens people's capabilities. When it comes to financial education, financial literacy, I feel that, all this is part of a bigger conversation around capability, right? I think everyone around the world, has the same capability. We just have to strengthen it in different ways. And of course, there's different components to it. There's a digital aspect, which, as you said, relates to how do we improve the core infrastructure of the country, right? From basic electricity to connectivity. There's huge opportunities now. We're in a country like India that has developed a world-class digital public infrastructure. And that is actually now supporting all this other innovation that is happening around. And I think that one of the great things about Nepal is that it has in a very exciting neighborhood. You have this amazing innovation happening next door across Holt. So to me, it's a huge opportunity. And I think in that sense, I cannot think of, a more exciting part of the world, right, to be located. That being said, as you mentioned, every country has its own barriers. I come from a country like Nepal that has huge mountains. I'm from South America. We have the Andes. Nepal has the beautiful Himalayas. And that creates barriers, that have to be overcome, through physical infrastructure. But of course, digital allows also to overcome some of those, barriers, right? Now, I think, one of the opportunities going forward is, once again, to continue working with, partners on the ground, all the development partners, World Bank, ADB, UN, AFI, to continue supporting the government priorities around financial inclusion. And we hope that we're able to do that as part of the next phase of our work.
What are the challenges do you see promoting digital finance access around the SAARC countries? You are looking at the Asia Pacific region right now. What are the major challenges in comparing to other countries in SAARC countries, basically?
I mean, I think kind of there are some universal issues that we experience, which is especially as we move. We're talking about going away from or moving beyond access to inclusion, right? And then from that to quality, right? Quality digital financial inclusion. I think that in any setting where there's more people transacting, where there's more products, there's a risk for fraud, cybersecurity. This is happening around the world. So I think kind of like one of the big challenges is precisely that, is ensuring that the public sector and the private sector are collaborating to ensure that the DFS ecosystem is growing in a way that addresses customer needs, but also does it responsibly, right? And I think kind of one of the opportunities that I see in the region, as I mentioned, is that there's a lot of opportunity for cross-country collaboration, right, and innovation and investment, right? Investment that can go back and forth. I think challenges, I think every country is different. There is no one silver bullet, as we say. The realities and needs of Nepal are different than the ones in Pakistan, different than the ones in Bangladesh. Every country has to find its own path, but the important thing is that we know already that there's core components that are being put into place that will support actually the development of that ecosystem.
One more question, and then you are dealing with that multiple institutions and countries, right? You are dealing with like AFI is there, better than cash, and then how important it is to coordinate this kind of organization and work in a one-way path kind of things. How it is important, how challenges it is.
It's very important, and we know our friends at AFI very well. Same thing with all the other development partners, World Bank, CGAP, and everyone who works in this field. And I think it's really important that development partners around the world in all markets collaborate, that they're supporting each other to ensure that there's no duplication of efforts, right? And more importantly, that they're all aligned to respond to government needs. I think all of us, working in the development sector, need to always be rallying behind what the government wants, right? And I think kind of like that is something that is important for us. We're very member-driven. We don't have a specific agenda. We support digitization of payments, but in a way that makes sense to the government of Nepal. That's, and if a government tells us, these are the priority sectors, for example, that we want to work on, this is how we want to do it, we'll find a way basically to respond to those needs. So I think kind of like for any of the development partners, the most important thing is good coordination and ensuring that there's alignment, behind actually government priorities.
So can you tell me that the session you are moderating, means you feel that has some issues to be raised, some questions to be asked, right? Today I am asking you, tomorrow you are asking to the panelists the questions you want to ask, right? What are the things you want to actually take out from your sessions and then establish that these things has to be done and then this narrative has to be built, you want to make that.
So if I understand your question correctly, here, in the context of the Global Fintech Festival we're here precisely because we're talking about interoperability and how to promote, how to leverage actually kind of like digital payments and digital financial inclusion in a cross-border setting.
Exactly.
So tomorrow we're actually having a really interesting session which will include the Central Bank of Brazil, Buna, which is the payments platform in the Middle East. We're also having EcoBank, one of the largest banks in Africa, as well as our colleagues at the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements Innovation Hub. And one of the things that I think many countries are starting to experience is that with a flourishing financial ecosystem, for example, like India, has UPI. UPI has started actually expanding internationally. We just saw this morning, there was a session that I attended with Peru, in which UPI is now actually launching in some way in partnership with the Central Bank of Peru. So we're seeing now an Indian platform being launched in Latin America. And I know there's already kind of like some linkages happening with countries like Singapore, UAE. So the next evolution, right, of any type of ecosystem is growing domestically and then seeing how that can be leveraged to promote international trade, right? And I think that's what it's exciting because I think that's the next frontier. And I think that we're precisely here to discuss how is this happening? How do we make it happen? How do we leverage? How to do, and try to draw from some of the examples that are starting to happen. We're in an early stage. I think there's very few countries that are managing to do this, because there's a commercial aspect to this, there's a regulatory aspect to this, there's a technology aspect to this question around cross-border, which is just at the very early start. So it's quite exciting actually to be having this conversation at this event.
Enabling the cross-border payments, as I know that small merchant, SMEs, let's say SMEs, get access to the global market, right?
Yep.
Due to the payment ecosystem, payment rails. So, do you think that a country like Nepal would get that golden opportunity to be in the global market due to the enabling the seamless system of cross-border payments?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the beauty of digital, right? That in a way the physical borders do not exist. I think that is obviously the next logical step, and what's amazing about it is that it does provide an entry point into this global marketplace. So I absolutely think that with the work that is happening at the moment in Nepal, being led by the central bank and the government, there's some great opportunities in the future for the SME sector in the country.
My personal request to Camilo is that please talk to our central banks and then tell them that they are in a preparation to launch the cross-border payment as soon as possible. They are working very hardly. Make them ease or educate them that from your side as well to launch as soon as possible. That our SME who lives in remote district of Nepal would get the place to place their products on Amazon and sell to the Cambodia in a country like Sri Lanka, right? They will get the opportunity to sell products on global market due to the seamless cross-border payments, I think so. So I hope you will do that. And then one more thing is that what are the security challenges the cross-border payments and the regulatory challenges cross-border payments are facing?
There's obviously some issues that are still being handled, right? One of them is, for example, transaction limits, that I know that in the context of trade is a big issue, right? That in most cases, in many jurisdictions, there's transaction limits for any type of digital transaction, for any type of financial transaction. We know internationally, for example, over 10,000, right, US dollars, triggers, certain regulatory KYC issues, and because of that, I think there needs to be some discussion regarding how to handle that, right? Obviously, at the domestic level, many of these conversations have already been had by the regulators, but at the cross-border level, I think there's some issues. There's just potential some issues with currency risk fluctuations, right? So how to manage that to ensure that all the parties that are involved, are protected, right? And as as with everything, right? There's always cyber risks, issues around fraud, who has jurisdiction over what. And the other thing, perhaps, that we see a lot now is that with the, flourishing ecosystem APIs, third parties, it becomes harder and harder with the innovation to know who actually is liable for what. And more importantly, from a customer perspective, the recourse component, if I'm a consumer or I'm a small business, right, and I'm using digital payments and there's an issue, I need to be able to know where to go, right? But now when there's multiple parties, in a value chain, and if we're talking about then, also cross-border payments, it becomes even more complex. So I think, making sure that a payment is not just, flowing from one party to the other across, but we need to make sure that in case there's a problem, right, that there's appropriate recourse in place, and that the person or the business can, identify and know where to go to solve that problem.
People doing big business and big transactions have access to that regulatory part and everything, but challenges is to them who is doing a small business. They are trading on a global market, challenging of not receiving the money on time or not delivering the things on time. That has the challenges I have seen. How your alliance will work on it?
Yeah. So we, over the last couple of years, we've worked actually with all our members. We developed a set of principles. They're actually called the UN Principles of Responsible Digital Payments. And this is actually core to our advocacy that we do with governments and companies, right? On these principles that looked at issues around fairness, transparency, customer centricity, security, responsibility across the value chain. It is something that we work with on everything that we do. So when we work with the governments, for example, we've been advising some governments on the design of some of the faster payments architecture. We have been very, very supportive, right, of embedding some of these principles into the architecture of any type of payments intervention, because it makes sense. It protects consumers by increasing trust. You get more people to use it, and more importantly, you're also able to ensure that the payments infrastructure and financial services are being rolled out in a way that is the most inclusive as possible, right? Ensuring that rural customers are being included, that women are being included, or any other type of segment in society that historically has been underserved.
And then we are around the end of the conversations. So here in, let's come to the GFF. Here in the peoples are from around the globe. You are representing UN, one of the alliance. You are representing. What are the main takeaways financial services provided can take from this Global FinTech Festival?
So today's day one, obviously. So it's hard. I won't be able to tell you. Maybe ask me that question. On Friday once we have the full. But I think, look, the number one takeaway is you can see the amount of innovation that is actually kind of like happening today. I've only been here for a couple of hours, and it's always incredible when you come to this region and to India, the amount of innovation, exciting products, and really being at the cutting edge basically of payments innovation. Which is exciting. I think this is going back to the point that I was saying. I think it's incredible opportunity for Nepal to be close to all of this, benefited, from the investment, from the, learning products that exist around here, and also contribute in their own way, because Nepal also has lots of things to show the world. So I think this is a great opportunity for all countries, to share their own opportunities and to learn also from India, from all the great work that it has done.
At last, the things I haven't asked you, and then you want to tell us the things you can tell us.
No, I think thank you for giving us this opportunity. It's really, really exciting, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Camilo, for your time, and
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.